Hello, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me okay and that you're doing good on this fine morning. It is sunny and summer-like in Seattle, and we've got a guest from the South today. So I'm wearing my gown. Felt like it was appropriate, and I'm really looking forward to this time together. We've got a great morning planned and a great lunch planned, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and thinking about how do we engage today as business leaders and as leaders in the marketplace influencers. And as we've been doing these C3 Leaders Lunch and Learns, we've been having somebody share a little bit of a testimony to how they are doing. And I've got somebody with us today to do that. Ann Kuchera. Ann is in one of our forums in Bellevue, Washington. And Ann is what you would call a marketplace influencer. She has tremendous influence. She is one of the leaders at Northwest University, a light on the hill for us here in Seattle. And Ann, I'd love to have you just share a little bit about C3 and what that's meant to you.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you, Mason, and greetings to those on the other side. Can you hear me? Okay, is that a yes?
No. Cannot hear you. Let's see. Oh, you were unmuted. Give it a go again. We'll see if it works.
Are we on now? Can you hear me now? Let me unplug. How about now?
You're good to go, Ann. Go for it. We can hear you.
All right. Sorry about that. Hey, technical difficulties. This is happening often. I did a Facebook Live last Saturday. Didn't get on. Had another opportunity this Saturday, which is a second chance. And funny enough, that was our topic. Anyway, good morning. I'm Ann Kuchera, and I joined a C3 forum just about 2 years ago. I'd been wanting to be a part of a forum for a number of years, ever since I heard about C3 when I started working at Northwest University about 6 years ago. It wasn't until I started where I felt like I was in a greater position of influence and leadership that I felt like I needed a small group of other like-minded leaders to live out my walk in Jesus. And I had some areas, I will humbly admit, some areas in my life that really needed some sharpening. Sisters and brothers to come alongside and in a place of security, trust, honesty, and transparency where we could work together in community to live out the high calling that Jesus has called us to. So I found a group, prayed about it, and found a group. There were a number of groups to choose from, but I really prayed about it because I knew what I wanted out of a small group. And so got into a group of women only, and like I said, for 2 years now. And it's life transforming. I'm experiencing freedom in my walk with the Lord, intimacy with others that I've never had before, sense of trust and safety in relationships, where I was leery of trusting people and didn't feel safe. These gals have become women that I'm in journey. I know it is weekly Wednesdays do a virtual lunch, and we make a commitment to show up at least 3 times a month. It's really hard to stay connected and encourage one another if we're popping in and out. So our group made a commitment that to participate, you've got to show up on a regular basis, and that has really served us well. So that's my experience with C3.
That's fantastic, Ann. And have you noticed that I put headphones on? The problem was not with your mic; it was with my ears. So okay. It was not going through right speaker. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. As you were going, I was like, "This is not working right. There's something." And it's like, oh, my speaker's not on. So thank you for sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
God bless you. Mm-hmm. Well, now that you can hear and I can hear, we are in good shape, and we've got a great panel today for you. Before we get started, though, I really want to talk about expectations for our time, and we've done this each week. You know, there's really a small window for you to work on you in this time. You're working on everything else from PPP to bank products to your kids' homework to relationships to just trying to right the ship. And this hour is designed and intended for an investment in you as a leader. And we have found that the best way for you to do that, and the best way for me to do that, is to close all the other windows, silence my phone, close my door. I've already told my wife that I'm in a meeting and I'm going to be busy for an hour. So to take this window for you, God has you here for this time. I'm convinced of that, for this screen, if you will. So don't miss this opportunity. You will want your engagement. And even those watching the recording later, because I know that we'll have a number of people watching this recording later, please engage in this time. And we're going to start with this. The very first thing we've been doing, and that's been helpful, is for you all to think about what are your expectations for this hour. So we're going to take 30 seconds to jot this down. What is your expectation for this hour? What are your expectations for this hour? And then what do you need today? We're going to take 30 seconds to jot that down. What are your expectations for this hour? And what do you need today? We do believe that God has you for a reason here today, and we want to encourage you to dig into that, whatever it may be. All right. You good? Let's dig in. You know, one of the things we asked you all and that we wanted to share with James and Rose, and James or Rose are watching in the green room, if you will. By the way, Ray is working on getting in. So we may get Ray, we may not. We'll see. But one of the things we asked people that registered is, what do we want the rest of the nation to know about Seattle, about our marketplace? And this is the summation of the answers. One is that God is at work in the city, and God might even bring revival here in the most unchurched city in the country. And then secondly, we may be the most unchurched area of the country, but those of us who attend church are seriously committed. So we want to get that out to the world about the city of Seattle. We are a city that is committed to Jesus. We're committed to the church. We're committed to bringing work and our faith together in one place in our lives. So we wanted to make sure to get that to Rose and James as well. The other thing I want to ask you to do is to share this right now with friends on Facebook. We had some problems this morning with our registration. So our registration numbers are going to be down today. But I know this will be viewed later. We've seen hundreds of views following the time. But right now, what would be great is if you're on Facebook and you have friends that you think they're business leaders working on their faith, they're struggling in COVID, they could use this time, just send them a share. It's really easy to do on Facebook. You could do it right now. So feel free to do that. The other thing I want to make sure that you do is use the chat box. We will be doing question and answers at the end if we have time. And we want you to use the chat box, not only to note questions, but if you have conclusions, thoughts, ideas that come to mind that you want to share, throw them in the chat box. I'll be watching that, and we'll get you into the circle of engagement with folks. Now, most of the people on this stream today are from Washington State, the evergreen state. And we love our state, but there is no doubt that we swim in very narrow channel. It is a city that is rain-soaked, Boeing bent, tech-driven, and very much, what do we call it? The Seattle chill. We operate the way we operate. And in this season of COVID, one of the things that we have discovered in meeting with business leaders is that it is a time for pivoting. I said early on, the business word of 2020 will be the word pivot, and it's actually crushing it. We'll be tired of it by the time we get to July, I think. But we're all thinking new thoughts. We're dreaming new dreams. We're expanding our boundaries. We're jumping into tomorrow, and the hope for this time is that we will gain insights on how to think, dream, expand, or jump from people that are living in different environments than us around the US. We'll have a different perspective. And so to do that, we have an amazing panel, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. And I'm going to start with Rose and ask her to join us. And I look forward to hear Rose Wynne. Sorry, I knew I was going to do that right away. Rose Wynne. Rose Wynne is the new executive director of the Nashville Institute of Faith and Work, and it's a fairly new job to you, right? Just as C3 is to me as well. How long have you been at the Nashville Institute of Faith and Work?
I joined on March 3rd. So just in time for the pandemic.
March.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to go to the casino together as well. Just so you know. March 3rd. That's some timing. I thought I was bad joining in November. Well, it's scary time and unsure time. I'd love to just start by hearing from you. And especially in Nashville, you had the tornado. When did the tornado hit down? Was that in February or March?
That was in late February. It was like a double hit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the vibe in the city? What's the tune?
So Nashville is, I would say, a city that is very entrepreneurial, very, it's a deeply caring city. You were talking about Seattle not being known to being a city with a lot of churchgoers, and Nashville is the belt of the Bible Belt. I'm sorry, the buckle of the Bible Belt. So we have a lot of people here who have their hands out for helping people, and people who are in need and know that there's a lot of places they can go to get it. That doesn't mean that everybody that needs help is getting help. It just means that this is a city who is really good about putting their hands out. And I can give you a couple of examples of that if you'd like.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that. We're going to talk about stories of hope, and it would be good to hear that. I've seen some of that as well. And I know you're new to the Institute there, but before that, you were in Fortune 100 companies for a career, basically. And,
yes.
So I'd also love to hear about how you're integrating your work experience with your faith and in this new work as we go forward. But I'm thankful that you're with us today, and we'll come back to you in a second with the panel.
Thank you, Mason.
Yeah, you bet. Also joining us is James Anderson, and James is the president of the new Canaan Society. And James was my last meeting before my last trip before COVID. Did you know that? I mean, we were together in Orlando. What weekend was that? Was that early March?
March 8th and 9th. So yeah, how much the world has changed since then, huh?
Yeah. It was funny though, because I was the kid from Seattle at this conference of new Canaan leaders from around the country, and their nickname for me became Carrier, I think, because I was there with. It was so funny. Where are you from? I'd be like, the Northwest. I was trying to not say Seattle, but people were very gracious to me and welcomed me, and it was great to be with you guys. And James, where are you at now?
I live in Colorado, which is wonderful. Our offices are in Manhattan and Rockefeller Plaza, and most of my staff is there, but it's really nice to be able to not have to live in Manhattan for me. It's a very good spot for me and my family here. And most of my staff, we already work virtually to a great degree. So this has been less difficult of a pivot staff-wise, at least for us.
And you have chapters all across the country, both coasts, Texas, Colorado. What are you generally hearing from people? How are they doing?
Yeah, we have about 70 chapters in some state of formation and going and things like that in 26 states. So we've got about a 24,000 person mailing list. We're an all men's organization of marketplace men. We're seeing quite a bit of, obviously guys are trying to figure out on a weekly basis kind of what the heck is happening. It's been really great though. Our chapters have pivoted really well. I think that first article I saw that really brought flatten the curve into our lexicon came out. I saw it on, I think, the 14th of March. And by the 15th of March, we'd recommended to all of our chapters that they suspend meeting immediately. And by those first couple days, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week, we had a plan in place. We had tools in place. We were giving some tutorials about how to go from a baby boomer to a baby zoomer and to figure out a lot of this technology, what was available with sharing screens, watching videos, using technology and different forms of like Zoom functionality in the platforms, and then really getting guys up and running, how to use breakout rooms and various things. So it really got, I think we got off to a really good start quickly.
Mm-hmm. And how are you doing in Denver? Who are your family and kids, everybody, you're homeschooling the whole deal, right?
Yes, that's been an interesting pivot. So my wife works for one of our very large churches here. We average about, I don't know, 8 or 10,000 people a weekend. So it's a very large church, and she runs the office for our lead pastor. So she's quite busy trying to pivot and make plans and do a lot of things. I'm working from home. So we arm wrestle every morning over who gets the office with the doors and who gets the dining room table with my 2 daughters who are 7th grade and 5th grade and are indeed finishing up in e-learning, which total misnomer. There's no e-learning. It's just full blown. You're dropped into homeschooling. So I'm pretty worthless. They've already outpaced my mathematical education by the 5th and 7th grade. So I handle PE and special projects is sort of my limited contribution. So, but yeah, I mean, all in all, I think we're handling it better than we probably even expected.
And before New Canaan Society, you were in real estate for a while, and prior to that, in movie production, scripts and such.
Yeah. So came out of Biola University and USC into studio work, screenwriting, directing, music videos, a lot of creative stuff. And then that led into me helping the guy who owned our company do some real estate. And that led to me understanding that I knew ego, money, contracts, and negotiation, which are really some of the key things. I started into a pretty significant coastal LA real estate business that I ended up franchising and owning a couple of offices and running a very large team, which also led to a very unhealthy materialism and self-absorption and kind of becoming a jerk, really. So anyway, I left there and I was looking for something that, God could use all those experiences. And that led us to come to Colorado and come to work for New Canaan Society. So it's been a really neat journey.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks for being with us. And this is pretty fun. Ray Carter, all the way from Chicago. I don't even want to know what kind of browser you had to download to get with us, but you made it, man. Way to go.
Thanks, Mason. I appreciate it. Sorry for the problem. I just couldn't get online.
I'm glad it worked out. Now I'm going to introduce you, Ray, and then you're going to debunk everything I said because you're such a humble leader. Ray is the founder of a movement really in Chicago called the Chicago Fellowship. They meet regularly, but it's more about meeting, just business dudes meeting together in the city for breakfast. They really are thinking about how they impact their city for Jesus. And prior to that, he taught kids how to throw screwballs and sinkers at Vanderbilt University. How did I do, Ray?
You've said way too much already.
Well, tell us about what's the vibe in the Windy City? Which way are the winds blowing?
Well, that's a good question. Everybody's sheltering in place, and it's almost like God reached his hands out to the whole world, I guess. We're no different, and just said stop, and everything has pretty much stopped. I live downtown, always have, and the city downtown I tell people it's like an early Sunday morning every day, all day long downtown. The lakefront's closed and parks are not open. And so we've had a pretty strong case of it here in Illinois, but especially in the Chicagoland area. So a lot has shut down, and people are trying to respect that and honor that, but getting a little stir crazy. And the weather hasn't really broken yet, so it's not a good time to get outside. But anyway, it's just I would guess like it's been for a lot of people, a lot of places.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us. We're gonna pull back together in the panel in a second here and ask some questions. What we're doing here, we've done a few of these lunch and learns, and this is the first one we're doing a panel concept, and we'll see how it works. We're going to ask I've sent some questions to the panel participants to kind of think about in preparation for our time, and we're going to go through and ask them those questions. And then I also want to give you time. And by the way, panelists and those of you watching, this idea came from people that have attended our webinars. I did a little poll, what would you like to see? And they said they'd love to hear from people around the country. And I thought, well, let's give it a go with you all and see how this works. So the first question that I have for you all is, as you meet people, as you're out and about, a scale of 1 to 10, how are folks doing generally? How are they feeling?
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I can start just since I'm on the top box on my thing. So anyway, we have about 70 chapters, about 45 of which are continuing to meet pretty actively virtually, which I think is great. And what we're seeing is guys have really risen up. I think there's a lot of a need, and I think we're even seeing some chapters are adding meetings to what they're doing, where they're offering maybe like I don't know, we love to do kind of an afternoon, maybe that's a happy hour sort of brothers and beverages, or men with mugs, or drinks and discussion, whatever. But it's an opportunity for a little bit more of a casual interaction, which I think has been really helpful. As well as maybe some of our chapters are also doing a morning offering of just prayer, which I think is good as well. So we're trying to do several things in addition to that. I'm seeing that men are super hungry for connection. Men in particular, I think, are prone to the economy of performance and what we can do, and getting our identity from that, which is just a really bad place to get our identity, and all this stuff just stripped away. And all this stuff has just been flattened. And so I'm seeing that men are really needing new things, new answers for a new time. In my marketing and real estate stuff, one of the things I learned is that the first rule of propaganda is that disorientation leads to suggestibility. It's an odd statement, but what it really means is that when you take away the normal rhythms of life, people are open to new ideas. And just about every person I know is pretty disoriented right now. And so we're needing new answers for a new time. And there's a new time now, and then there's a new time coming, which I think will be, in whatever kind of the future holds, as we open up the country again and kind of begin to take assessment of the battlefield once we come out of our foxholes here.
Give us that quote again. I wasn't able to write that down fast enough. Disorientation?
Yeah, disorientation leads to suggestibility.
That's
Obviously,
good.
that has a bit of a negative connotation, but taken in a broader context, especially in light of now, we just see when people are spiritually sort of brought into a new environment, they're very open to things they haven't been looking for, new disciplines, things like that. When you see people lose jobs or lose family members or those kind of things, suddenly they need new answers, and so that's kind of what we're seeing.
Rose, Wynne, what about for you?
I think what I'm seeing is I haven't seen a lot of despair, which I think is really very encouraging. I think people first sort of had to let their feet get a little bit more stable underneath them. I mean, the earth kind of shook in many ways with what we entered into. And it's hard to believe we're only 6 to 8 weeks into this. It feels so much longer, but yet we're so early in to whatever this is going to turn out to be, whether it's the ice age or a blizzard or winter, or some of the things that Andy Crouch has talked about that I found so valuable. But I find people pretty sort of, I would say, unsure, but open, as James indicated. and not really wanting answers so much as wondering what this is, the purpose of this. Why is this happening? And I think that's not a bad place to be in. I also think that we are used to this in Nashville, these sort of upheavals, if you will. And we've been through a lot of change and disruption in this city. And I know I have in my career as well. I didn't have one of those careers that, was like a very, up and to the right all the time. There are a lot of disruptive industries that I've been in as well. So I think this is just people learning to use some skills that they developed over the years, and not taking a wait and see, but knowing that the answer isn't there just yet, and trying to take it a day at a time.
But why the upheaval? Why have there been so many transitions in Nashville? I wanted to have known that.
So part of it has been the tremendous growth that we've experienced. So over the last 2 years, we've had on average of 100 people moving to Nashville on a daily basis, or the Nashville area. If you were to drive through our downtown, it is reported that we have more cranes for buildings than Manhattan does. So people are, certain neighborhoods have become gentrified, and people are getting pushed further out of the city in some ways. Property values have increased significantly, which is good, but it's also bad for people who are trying to purchase homes or be able to rent closer to their work. So we've been going through this evolving, evolving kind of economy for some time. And while it's been good for some people, it's not been good for all. Yeah. And there's been good recognition of that. And I think that has made us a little bit more agile and more open to change and disruption. And also, I think you also have to think about our industries. We have more music industry in Nashville than any other place in the U.S. So high creative, high tolerance for risk. With the entrepreneurs that we have here that started Healthcare Corporation of America and several other companies, it's sort of part of our persona, I would say.
Yeah. And Ray, you shared a little bit about the city of Chicago, but give us a feel for how are folks doing, scale of 1 to 10, et cetera.
Yeah, I think people are doing well. I think, as Wynne said, we're on the front end of it. It seems longer than that. We stopped meeting on our Friday mornings, several weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, I think now, and that was our front door, and the time we were able to come together and kind of feel a part of something larger. But we missed that, and it feels like it was a year ago we stopped doing that. So I think guys are hungry for physical connection, but they're connecting with families, and they have the means to shelter in place pretty comfortably. And so, that part of it is going well for them. And I've actually seen, as you know, Mason, when you were here, we were talking about kind of our core purpose was to help guys engage in some of the broken, stressed places of our city and our world, and explore the meaning of the gospel and stewardship of their life in relationship to that. And so it's actually helped us do that. It's made that more visible because it's done two things. It's helped our guys slow down, and it just stopped them in a lot of ways. And it's also made visible some of the economic and systemic injustices and inequities, that exist in our world. They're visible to us now. So the thing we try to move men toward all the time related to the stewardship of their life has actually become more visible, and they have more time to think about it. And they've actually been able to work together in response to it. We've had some exciting initiatives take place where we, in our normal network we have with the nonprofits in our city, we picked 7 of our major nonprofits recently and raised a fund and launched an initiative where they're empowering the mid-level restaurants and local restaurants in their own neighborhoods that wouldn't survive this, and are through them providing meals to families that are identified by these nonprofit ministries as families in need. And so we've been busy operationally doing a lot of the kind of thing we try to encourage guys to do anyway in the stewardship of their life. We just haven't been able to do it in each other's presence, but it's really created great opportunity for us, both for men to have time to think about it and respond to it. And as a city, we're looking at a really stressful summer, simply because in these neighborhoods that have been known for their violence, there are no summer programs planned. You know, there are no community centers open. There are no park programs. All that is shut down. So we're trying to figure out, as men and the families that are part of our fellowship, how we can, work with the city and support and respond to some of that need. So in that respect, it's actually been, the pause has actually been a blessing to us in some ways, but I think we all miss, the person-to-person contact. I wouldn't want to say I was late to the meeting, and I want to apologize. James, it's great to meet you. I had, when we were forming the fellowship here, our roots kind of came out of our visits with B.J. Weber and the New York City Fellowship, and out of which came New Canaan. And so I've been to those Mohonk retreats up in Mohonk and a couple in Washington. And I was with BJ not long ago, and I know Tom Colwell. So you're doing some great work, but it's great to meet you. I've heard a lot about you and the work you're doing. And Wynne, I have to take a moment and say, Nashville's my hometown. So I've got brothers and family and nieces and nephews there. And so always interested about what's going on in Nashville, and back there a couple of times a year. So it's great to meet you. My twin brother was an associate pastor at both Christ Pres and Covenant Pres, and works with Father Strobel now at Room in the Inn, and works with churches in trying to help them respond to the winter shelter program. But I apologize for taking the time to do that, but
that's good.
I just want to say hello to James and Rose.
So glad you did.
We have more connections than we think we had. Yeah.
Well, I was afraid, Ray, when Rose, Wynne, and you were here together. I thought, shoot, they could be related. A couple, Nashville, Southern folks. I knew she'd at least be more comfortable with your tone than mine.
Yeah, I love Nashville. Yeah, it's home. I was there, and until I left for seminary and stuff.
Well, speaking of those relationships and those connectedness, what have you seen that has brought people joy? This has been fun to watch the news reports of great things happening. What have you all seen? Rose, when you spoke to that a little bit at the start, I think, what have you seen that's been places of hope?
Well, the music that's being produced here, even though we have no stages or arenas to play in, just the creativity of how you see these groups coming together in the little screens on your Zoom or on YouTube, and the comfort and the joy that music continues to bring to everybody is really fantastic. There's a group of entrepreneurs here who have created a $2 million fund to help small businesses as a give back, called Help from 615, which is our area code. There's a woman in our group who has a small business, and was really questionable whether she was going to be able to make it. And a church came forward with enough money to bridge her for a couple of months for rent, which is going to make the difference between her staying in business and keeping 15 employees on board as well. So I think there's some really good things that are happening that are bringing joy, for sure, touching the heart as well as pragmatic joy, keeping your business.
I love it. What about the other two? What are you seeing that's bringing joy, hope?
Well, I'll just say, I am seeing a lot of men evaluate what kind of life they were living, and a lot of my the calls. I've had the privilege of, as of this morning, I've joined 39 of our virtual chapter meetings in the last 3 weeks. And it's just been terrific to just sit in and watch guys process and, kind of especially process this common shared story that we're all in right now. And what that means is a lot of commonality. And in commonality, there's connection and opportunity to, I don't know, minister to each other, build friendships and things. So I am seeing a lot of men sharing with this idea that, I do not want to go back to what I was doing before and the life I was leading and that kind of stuff. And I am seeing some similar things. A lot of our chapters are, kind of lighting a torch for hope and carrying a banner for light just by community partnerships, generosity, everything from community, donations from a chapter into a community impact fund or things like that, or supporting local businesses. Or a lot of our chapters meet in restaurants, and they've been just basically taking a collection and dropping that money off to the young lady or young man that's waited on them for many years just to kind of support that. And I think that kind of stuff's very cool. I've been asking, so one of the 3 questions I discuss with my kids every night is, what are you missing and mourning? I think that's an appropriate thing to kind of walk through and think about. I called them, what are your pleasant surprises? And my 7th grade daughter said, Dad, these should be called delightful surprises. Like, great. What are your delightful surprises? And then what are the things that you don't want to go back to, or what are the things you want to change? And so my youngest daughter, it's a lot about how, things she's involved with. My 7th grader is a lot about relationships and evaluating who are her real friends. And I think for a lot of men, they're figuring out how to be honest about the damage that's done to their businesses or families or, things like that. We're seeing a very heartbreaking amount of connected relationships. They're having overdoses, drug use and addiction things, several suicides. And I've been on 3 virtual Zoom funerals and 1 Zoom wedding, which just really is, those are very heartbreaking to see. But I think as they're processing that and being real, and then thinking through, like, what are the things that have been pleasant surprises, delightful surprises, and then making change, which a lot of it is about realizing I got a flimsy set of friends and a flimsy faith, and needing to address a far more robust and something foundational that they can count on in both of those areas, I think is very important.
What about for you, Ray? Where are you seeing places of hope?
Yeah, I would just echo the themes of the things that James and Rosa Wynne have talked about. We've seen in the midst of the hardships of people dealing with it, a couple of questions we ask our guys a lot is, what have you found yourself not doing? What have you stopped? What's been eliminated that you don't miss, and probably you realize you won't go back to, or have a desire not to go back to. And what have you added that you would go further with, as you come out of this? We push guys a lot to look inside themselves and, to explore their life honestly, to know other men and be known by men. But we have a way of saying to them as well that one of the best ways to get over yourself is to get beyond yourself. And I think some of what's happened now has allowed us to get beyond ourselves in some ways, and to, think larger than our own personal life. And again, to realize, I've had some guys tell me, I've realized I don't have to work at the pace that I have always worked at. And I've begun to explore not only what was driving me to that pace of work, but also what it was costing me and what I was missing. So when I think about, and James and Rose Wynne have both said this, as people have been forced to think about what they couldn't control and had to let go of, they've actually discovered some things about what they have been valuing that they no longer value nor need to value, and what's been driving that. And it's helped them begin to engage in some things that are giving them energy. And I honestly think that for a lot of the men and the families that are part of our fellowship, they will never go back to doing it just the way they've always done it. It's not going to happen. And they don't know all the answers to that. and we're exploring all that, but they're asking some good questions. They're asking the right questions.
Yeah, for each of you, because we're doing the same, and you've each shared this. How are you helping people, and how are you seeing people help themselves in that regard? I think it was Rob Manuel from your town, Ray, who said, "Never let a crisis go unused." Yeah,
Yeah,
in
well,
the Obama administration.
growing up in the South as an avid college football fan and an Alabama fan, it's kind of like Nick Saban said that same thing in a different way. He said, "Don't waste a loss," So when they had a setback or a tragic loss, said, "Don't waste it," And
So
we're
how,
trying
how
to.
yeah, how are we going to help men and women not miss the opportunity that's available here? Because the natural tendency for most of us is going to be fall right back into those patterns. How are you thinking about helping folks in that regard?
Yeah, I've responded. I'll give it to Wynne and James.
I think it's a great question. So one of the things that we're doing, two things I would say with NIFW is we have a flagship program. It's called Gotham. It's a faith and work integration intensive. It's 9 months long. And so we spend a lot of time in that 9 months, not only educating, but teaching the people, the fellows in that program, how to go through discernment and examine, as well as the discipline of meditation, hearing the voice of God. And so I feel good that we have done well for that group of people to have that as a resource. The other thing that we're doing, because we are around work, is helping people understand how to navigate their career in this time of a pandemic. Whether it's job loss, or I don't know what job I'm going back to, I don't know whether I'll have my job, or I don't want, as Ray said, my job to be the same as it was before. So we've had a couple of speakers come in and talk to in a webinar to talk about that, just really pragmatic kind of things. And then it's Nashville's a little different, I think, because so many people here go to church. And they are now, everybody has a complete menu to choose from of live streams. So I think people are getting that kind of resource if they want it. And if they don't want it, I'm not sure how to reach them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a seminar scheduled for Thursday called "We're Not Going to Waste This Crisis," and we've had to postpone it because our governor's not allowing us. I really want it to be a workshop, face to face, or at least socially spaced, because I think it's the work that needs to be done is pretty significant. James, any thoughts from you?
I think one of the things I'm seeing is that, and Roseland touched on it, but it's sort of a tactical and practical. A lot of things about, how do I prepare myself for the new world economy here and whatever we're going back to. I think that one of the things I'm seeing is a lot of like digital fatigue, and even, I don't know, call it somewhat level of spiritual fatigue, where I'm seeing that men are tired of the phrases that we get that we would crochet on a pillow or your grandmother had on her couch about, God won't give you more than you can handle, or be strong and courageous. And I think that what I'm seeing is that men in particular are looking for ways to process that internally, and how to internalize, how to come to terms with that truth rather than just having that truth in front of them. And we're all getting, I think, a lot of spiritual content. And the big question is, how do I make that true? And how do I come to believe that and understand that more? And again, I think doing that in the context of friendship and community and those things, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at a lot of very tactical, practical ideas. We've been doing some kind of national webinar type things where we're giving people an opportunity to process with their wives on marriage stuff and what it's like home dynamics, or what it's like to look at the political agenda that we have, or what it's like. Next week we have Nikki Gumbel from London who's going to talk about kind of the church has left the building. So how are we taking this moment to impact greater community, things like that. So I do think those are the hopeful things. Those are the opportunities in front of us. And I think it's tactical and practical over theology per se.
I've got a question from one of our C3 members, and that's all really good, by the way. And the thing I love about what y'all were talking about, whether it's Gotham or the breakfast or the groups being together, is the ongoing relationship that happens from connectedness, that the depth of work that could be done when men and women sit together in a committed peer-to-peer relationship, because none of us are this isn't Convene or C12. It's a lot of peer-to-peer or in the like we're doing these webinars, and this is our last one because this is not what we do. I mean, this is fine, but our good work is the C3 forum, a group of men sitting together, a group of women sitting together, talking about their business and their lives and integrating that. So there's a place for both, but our business is that one. We're gonna have one question at the end for you all, which I really want to hear from you as spiritual leaders. What is God teaching you, and what is God teaching those around you? But before we get that, I have a question from one of our C3 members, Ron Warman. Our social and economic systems are based on growth. It's true. If it wasn't based on this premise, would it threaten our way of life? How does this impact your worldview? For example, I have to grow forums. If I don't grow forums, I've failed at some level, or grow in dollars raised, or whatever it might be. So how does this touch on this? Anybody want to take a stab at Ron's question? It's a big one.
Yeah, I'll take a swing at it. I think, I think for everything we see in the business community. So for our guys, 72% of them identify as financial services or entrepreneur small business owners. So they're massively affected by this.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned that men have a very unhealthy view of themselves as basically performance or growth in kind of what we do, rather than kind of who God says we are, or a different kind of identity. So it's a very faulty identity. But everything we see from earnings, everything we see in newspapers is all about growth and third quarter, fourth quarter, all this. Everything that's making us panic right now is the loss of growth and moving backwards in our economic systems and things like that. And I think that, especially for men, just because that's kind of my area of focus, I think that we have such an out of balance sense of like personal growth. So you'll see the Tony Robbins kind of growth that, is like, believe in yourself, and we're going to walk on coals, and we're going to do this kind of stuff. But a lot of personal growth, I think, internally comes from kind of going backwards. It's sort of from going deeper, which, what was the model of friendships and marriage I got from my father? How were my accomplishments celebrated as a kid? I mean, some of this is kind of psychological unpacking, and as you go deeper, I think you find that freedom and growth. I think we often ask men to evaluate what are kind of the winds that blow their lives. There's a huge wind farm not far from here. You can't see the wind, you can't hear the wind, but you can see these enormous turbines that it's turning and creating energy. And that's a great example of men's lives, where you don't see the winds that are blowing, you don't hear the winds that are blowing you, but they have power and are driving everyday decisions. And so I think if we didn't have a growth perspective of kind of this always driving, at least I think we might evaluate things in a little bit more healthy way. And then things like this wouldn't affect our view so much. And I think if we balanced kind of the who is James as well as what does James do and how is James being effective or having impact, I think that worldview would be much healthier for all of us.
What about?
I would add to that. I would say that after spending 25 years striving and trying to do everything on my own, it was me, I'm doing it. It's all on my shoulders. I think the big thing as Christians and having your faith and work integrated is that you are working for God. You're serving alongside Him. It's not you in the front. And grow where God wants growth. And that's a big mind shift. And how is He leading that growth? Are you actually hearing Him each day as to where that growth comes? And I will tell you that I personally have been experiencing recently, tremendous comfort and reassurance that His voice is better than mine. And He does want growth. He absolutely wants growth and renewal. And if you can get in with Him, wow, just think about how awesome all of this could be. And I think there's some places where really great growth is happening. And a lot of creativity and entrepreneurship is happening, not only in small entrepreneurial businesses, but in large corporations. I mean, look what's happening in pharma. How they have turned around and how these companies all of a sudden were able to make the not aspirators. What are they? The
Ventilators.
Ventilators. Thank you. So things can happen, and God, just looking at that is hopeful to see how He, and I believe everything is all Him. How He has opened up so much creativity and innovation already. I think there's a lot more to come, but we got to get out of the driver's seat. That's my thing. What He's been teaching me is, because I always had to be in control, and I still struggle with it every single day, is not to be in control.
Yeah.
Striving, such a good word. That's a great word. Just striving and kind of pushing. And I know for our board and our staff, like our prayer, something that we continue to sort of cling to and stick a flag in is like, give us wisdom to know where you are working, rather than us kind of trying to figure that out on our own and kind of do what we think maybe God wants, or do things for God rather than with God. And I think that it's a great word, Rosewyn.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add to what both Rosewyn and James have said, that it's when you think about growth, I think it's important to think about how we measure growth and by what standard do we measure growth, and how does God say, as His followers, as Christ's followers, should we measure growth? And are we really creating greater opportunities for a greater number of people to realize their full God-given humanity through the opportunity and access that they have to the productive resources of our day? Or are we simply measuring growth by what a few people are able to experience in their life, and it's completely out of rhythm with the standard that God would use to measure real growth? So I think everybody's saying the same thing, and this is a great opportunity to help guys understand it, and their men and women understand it.
Yeah. Well, that's really good stuff. Rosewyn, your quote, "His voice is better than mine." I think we'll get the T-shirts printed, maybe COVID-19 on the back. We'll get it going. The last questions. You all are spiritual leaders, and that is such a gift. And I want to hear, what is God saying to you? What do you hear Him talking about when we're listening for His voice? What are you hearing? We've got 4 minutes left, so about 1 minute each.
So for me, I always like having a plan and knowing what's going to happen. And what I'm hearing from Him is, no, take it a day at a time. Have your plan, but know that it's going to be different. And reside in that patience and listen.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is all about kind of a shifting thing. I've learned in my own life, and I continue to see it just be a truth, that God is a God of relationships above and beyond anything else. It's how he and the triune God live, and how they created us and what they put in us and our in making us in their image. Certainly any man I know that's married is a better man because of his wife. And so certainly true of me. So kind of that smoothing of the rough edges. Again, we've kind of been stripped of relationships. And I think right now, I think just recognizing God's love of relationships and how he's using all things at all times to redeem the world to himself. And we get to be a part of that and be part of what he is doing. But we're absolutely, I think, needing to adjust our answers and come to these things and be reminded that relationship and connectivity is like the essence and a virtue of God. And without those things, we're really only living part of who we are built to be. It's like a tractor only using wheels on one side, or something, an airplane that only uses part of its wings. We're just made that way.
Yeah. Ray, bring us home.
Yeah, just say quickly, there's so many great opportunities, and it's finding my place in what God is doing, as both James and Rose Wynne have said. And, in our fellowship, we talk all the time about, I think for a long time, business leaders have been ministered to in the area of ethics and being generous with their success. And both those things are good. I don't think we've done as good a job of helping them understand their story, the story that they were given, and to not nullify that story, but to explore what it would look like if God worked redemptively in that story. That's why Zacchaeus is the template for the guy in the fellowship. He kept being a tax collector, but he just did it differently. He saw people he'd never seen before. He dealt with them in a different way. He said, I've got enough. He stewarded his life in a different way. So we're all the time trying to help men explore that, men and women explore that. And so what God is teaching me is it's important for me to explore that, that with all the great voices, for example, that have been on this call today, just to be able to say, Ray, where's God put you? Who is he giving you favor with? What is the voice he's given you? Play your part in this, and help other men and women do the same. And it'll work. It'll weave its way into a beautiful tapestry, and to God will be the glory.
Wow, that's great.
Amen.
That's great. Hey, Rose Wynne and Ray and James, thank you not only for joining us, but thanks for what you're doing. I really do believe that there is a revival coming in our country in this season, and I have a 25-year-old son who's in real estate, and for Mother's Day yesterday, he was sitting in the backyard with us, and he said, "I hate the word minister, but I'm a minister." And I said, "You are a minister." And I think there's business people that are coming to understand the Reformation, every man a minister, every woman a minister quote that is so important today. So thanks for the part you're playing in that. And thanks for being with us today. It's been tremendous.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Take care.
Rose Wynne, great to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Ray. And thank you all for being with us. This has been a real treat today. I hope you've been blessed. For those of you that are watching this later, know that just as I shared a little bit ago, prayer is available. And also, as I shared earlier, our main work in C3 is in the C3 Forum. That's where we really bale our hay. And it's not just because my hair is getting too long that we're stopping these webinars. It's because we want to focus on what we do well, and that's a C3 Forum. So if you want to be in a C3 Forum, the information is right there for you. And lastly, if you need help, we have established the C3 Leaders COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Program. The website for that is www.c3leaders.com/C3 greater than C19. And that is more than a pun. It is the truth that business men and women linking their arms with the creative God and saying, we're going to get after this, are going to do great things. We're going to support and love each other in doing that. So as always, the best place to get information about C3 Leaders is on our mobile app or on the website. It really has been a pleasure with our guest today. So thank you for being a part of it. And we will be back together again. When we are, it'll be on our events page or on the C3 mobile app. God bless y'all.